My name's Ben. I'm one of the pastors here. If you're new to West Winds, welcome. We're so glad that you're here with us on this Labor Day weekend. One quick thing by way of announcement, and then we'll jump in here. We have a team here at West Winds that works on what we call aesthetics, which is basically all the cool stuff that you see in and around the building, from the tables that are kind of dispersed throughout the chairs to the light bulbs with the plants, which I still haven't figured out how they got the plants inside the light bulbs, but those kind of things that are all around. And that team, it's led by Mel Evans on our staff, just does an amazing job of creating a place that when you come into it, yeah, you can clap for them. When you come into it, feels like sacred space in a sense. And so every so often they do a pretty significant change of all of that stuff, and that's happening this week. So this afternoon, right after this service, they need some help getting all of the chairs kind of up and out of the auditorium here so that they can do some of the work they need to do throughout the week. So if you have a few minutes to stick around after the service to help with that, that would be much appreciated. Mel will be in here in the auditorium and can tell you what to do, and it just take a few minutes to get all that stuff out. So if you have the time to help us, we appreciate it. We are on the last week of a series called Stories Every Christian Ought to Know. And then next week we're jumping into the happiness stuff that Dave has written. I've read through the happiness book a couple times now, and I can tell you it's fantastic. It made me very happy. So I don't know if that was the only goal of it, but it's a great book, and we're excited to share that information with you in the weeks coming. But to jump into what I want to talk to you about today, I'd like you to think about a time that you've lost something. Just get a thought in your mind, and this can be something simple, a wallet, keys, something like that, or it can be something more significant. But think about something like that in your mind, because I don't know if there's anything more stressful than losing something, anything that produces more anxiety kind of in the short term than losing something. And if there is something that creates more, it's losing something that belongs to someone else. Right? Losing your own stuff is bad enough, but if you lose something that someone else's, that can create a whole nother level of problem. I experienced this a few years back when we were dog sitting for my wife's sister and her family. Now, my wife's sister has 5 kids. They got 5 little girls, and they had this dog, a little white rat-looking thing. There's 2 kinds of people in the world. There's those who like little rat-looking dogs that yap all the time, and then there's the rest of us, the normal ones, that don't. They were a family that did, and they had this dog, and they just loved it. Now, they let the girls name it, and the girls decided they wanted to pick a name for the Bible to name their dog, which, look, I'm all for the Bible. This is what I do, but you shouldn't name your animals out of the Bible. They did, and the name they picked was from an Old Testament story of Ruth, and they decided to name this dog Boaz. So you got a weird dog with a weird name running around our house, yapping and causing trouble. Now, it didn't affect me very much because I didn't have to do anything with the dog for the entire week that we watched him, except for one day. One day, Patty was at work, kids were at school, the dog was my responsibility, and I lost it. It got out of the house when I had the door open to take some trash out or something. So they come home later on in the day, and Patty starts saying, "Ben, where's the dog?" And I don't know. It's upstairs in one of the bedrooms. It's somewhere. Well, eventually we find out that the dog is gone, and everyone is losing their minds. Now for different reasons, though. My kids are sad because they're kids, and it's a white puppy, and it's gone. My wife is sad because she's thinking of how she's going to tell her sister. I'm just sad because I'm public enemy number 1. Everyone in my family hates me at this moment because I've lost this dog. So we decide that we're going to go out and we're going to look for the dog. So we split up in teams. I'm with my son, my wife and daughter go, and we're just going all around the neighborhood yelling for this dog, looking for it. And of course, it's got a stupid name, so we got to yell Boaz, Boaz out all around the neighborhood, right? So we get to the end of the night and we don't find it. The sun sets. It's time to go to bed. No dog. Now, if you're a pet lover, and we have 2 dogs, a couple cats of our own, and so I understand that. But if you're married, you understand the moment I was in is I'm laying in bed. My wife is next to me. She's softly crying because we can't find the dog. The kids are crying in their rooms because we can't find the dog. And I'm laying there going, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can say. I can't reach over with a reassuring touch right now. I am dead to my family, and I'm just going to go to sleep as quickly as possible and, hope to never wake up. But Um, we did wake up, and the next day we found the dog, and everything was okay. And then my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, like a month later, they get rid of it. So why didn't we just leave it out there? I don't know. But I tell you that story to say that moment that I'm laying there in bed, knowing that everything is unresolved, I think everybody can go, okay, I understand that feeling that I've lost something, that feeling that everything isn't quite right. Now, that story's funny because it's a little dog and it's resolved, right? But there are other stories that we all have about loss that probably are harder to wrap our minds around, harder to deal with. I mean, if you know my story at all, you've heard me talk about my mom before. A couple weeks ago would have been her 63rd birthday. She died 10 years ago, really 11 years ago, very suddenly. And the picture I'll always have in my mind is of my sister, my dad, and me walking out of the hospital, and my dad just slumping down kind of in the hallway and going, I can't leave. It's not supposed to be like this, right? Because as soon as he walks out the door, the loss becomes real, and he doesn't know what to do. I talked to a buddy of mine the other day who's going through a divorce, and he just said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what to do tomorrow. I don't know how the next season of my life works. I've lost something, and I don't know how to live with this loss. Talked to a friend about a month ago who's a pastor at a church for 25 years. His family goes there. His kids are in the youth group. They go to school in that town, and he gets called in by the board of directors and fired from his job. Now, not only does he lose his job, his family loses the place they go to church. He has to move to find a different job. His kids have to go to a different school. It's awful, right? It's loss. So you can fill in whatever you want in that blank of what it is that you've lost. But whatever that is, we all have to figure out how to deal with it, and it's a difficult thing to do. So whatever your loss is, whether it's something that I mentioned, or maybe it's the loss of, someone told me at 8:30 this morning, they said, I just feel like as I get older, I've lost my significance or my purpose. I talked to someone after the 10 o'clock service who said, I just feel like I have a loss of value. I don't think I matter to anyone. So whatever it is that you feel in loss, I think this story today will help you. I think it's a story that you ought to know, and it's from the Old Testament. And it's a book of Judges. It's a story of a guy named Gideon. Now, if you've been around church for a long time, you might have heard this. If you're new to it, you probably haven't. But I'm going to walk through a couple chapters of the Bible here, and I'm just going to do it by kind of telling the story. But if you'd like to read all the kind of nitty-gritty details for yourself, you can do that in Judges chapter 6 and chapter 7. So Gideon was mentioned in the Bible at a time when Israel was at war with a country called Midian, and the Midianite people had a very vast, well-trained, aggressive, dominant army, and they were at war with Israel. And the story of Gideon starts in kind of strange fashion. The Bible tells us that an angel comes to Gideon, and the first thing the angel says to him is he says, "Mighty hero, don't be afraid, God is with you." And then the angel goes on to tell Gideon that God has a plan for him, that God wants him to help lead the Israelite army against the Midianites. But when the angel says to Gideon, "Mighty hero, God is with you," the first thing that Gideon says is, well, hold on. If God is with me, then why is everything happening in the world the way it is? Why? Look around. Why are things so bad if God is with me? Where are all the promises that God made? Why aren't they being fulfilled? So what you see about Gideon right away is that he's kind of a glass is half empty kind of guy, which makes me like him. And if you're that way at all, if you feel like you're a little bit of a realist, a little bit of a pessimist, a little bit of a, I'm not sure this is going to work out, you'll really resonate with Gideon. Because as soon as God's angel comes up in this mighty grand gesture and says, I'm with you, I have something for you to do, but you can do it because you're a hero, Gideon's like, no, I don't think I can. To which God's angel responds and says, don't worry, I'll be with you every step of the way. And then Gideon says, let me tell you something about me that maybe you don't know. He said, see, I come from a tribe. Now, a tribe back then would have been like your family plus. So think your community and your neighborhood. He said, I come from a tribe that is the worst of the worst of the worst. If they ranked all the tribes like we rank college football teams, right, we'd be lower than Michigan State. No, I'm just kidding. I was at the game this weekend. We didn't look very good. I'm nervous, right? But he said, if you ranked all the tribes, if you ranked everybody, we would be down all the way at the bottom. And then he says, get this, if you ranked all the people in our tribe, I'm the lowest one. I'm a baby. I'm a whiner. I'm a coward. I come from the wrong side of town, the wrong place. Nobody thinks anything of me and my people, and I'm the worst of all of them. You don't want to pick me. To which God replies, God through his angel, and says, listen, you have everything that you need to have. Just take what you have and go, and I'll be with you. Now, it's interesting because Gideon is having such a conflict here because in this moment when God comes to him and says, I want to use you to do something, Gideon does what I think most of us do. He starts measuring right away. He starts kind of looking around and going, okay, what do I have? What can I do? But he's measuring himself, right? God says, I'm with you. I have something for you to do, and I'll help you do it every step of the way. What you have with you right now is enough. And Gideon goes, nope. I come from the wrong part of town, the wrong group of people. I'm not good enough. I'm the worst of the worst. Because Gideon's measuring himself. And I think that's what we do. I think we tend to look around whenever we have any kind of an opportunity or a chance to exercise our faith or to step out and to do something. I think our tendency is to look around and go, okay, what are my limits? What do I have? What have I lost? But look at what God says in response every time Gideon says that. Gideon says, I'm not enough. God goes, that's cool. I'll be with you. Gideon says, I come from the wrong part of town. God says, that's okay. What you have is enough because I'm with you. Right? While Gideon is looking at his limits and losses, God is saying, don't look at those, look at me. That's what real faith does. Faith doesn't look at doesn't evaluate by our limitations and by what we've lost. Faith evaluates by God's power. And see, eventually Gideon figures this out and he says to God, okay, if you're in this and I'm doing this for you, then give me a sign. And we won't get into this, but if you read in the story, Gideon asks God to do a couple different miracles, and God actually does them. God shows up and does what Gideon asks and proves himself. So Gideon agrees that he will lead this army into battle. So Gideon takes an army of 32,000 men to face the Midianite army. The Midianite army at this time was about 135,000 people. So it's about a 4-to-1 disadvantage for Gideon and his men. So they start on the journey to get to where this battle is going to take place. The Midianite army is down in a valley. The Israelites are up a little bit higher. And so they're moving towards the edge of a kind of a cliff almost, leading down into a valley so they can get a good position and decide what their next move would be. As they are on their trip over, God says, according to the Bible, to Gideon, something odd. He says, your army is too big. Now again, remember, 32,000 versus 135,000. And God says, the army you have, it's a little bit too big. We need to make it smaller. And here's how I want you to do it. I want you to get all your people together, and I want you to stand up and say, listen, if any of you are too afraid to fight this battle, you may go home. So Gideon, if I'm Gideon, I'm going, okay, but these are my Spartan warriors, right? These are my guys who, nothing's going to slow them down. So just picture Gideon standing up on a rock with 32,000 men all out around him. And Gideon says, listen, God is with us. He's given us the victory. But if on the slight chance any of you are a little bit afraid or maybe so afraid you can't stand it, okay, you can go. The Bible says that 22,000 of them leave at that moment. It means at that moment when Gideon gives his speech and says, hey, you can leave if you have to, 22,000 people go, oh, cool, thanks. I had something else I wanted to do anyways. So now Gideon is left with 10,000 people. And if I'm Gideon, I'm kind of looking back and going, dude, seriously? Like this is the plan? But God's not even done. Because a minute later, God comes to Gideon again and says, still too big. 10,000, still too many people. So here's what I want you to do this time. When your army stops to get a drink at the stream, I want you to watch how they drink their water. Some of them are going to drink by using their hands and scooping up water. Others of them are going to drink by lapping it up like a dog, just using their tongues. And I want you to divide them into two groups, those who drink with their hands and those who lap the water up like a dog. Now, when you hear that, if you're us reading this today, you're sitting there going, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Who makes a decision like that? But think about it from a strategic military kind of standpoint. If you're going to drink with both your hands, what does that mean you've put down? Your weapons, exactly. That means that you're not exactly the sharpest knife in the military drawer, because you're in a battle situation and you're putting down your weapons so you can get a drink. That means the elite soldiers, right? The A unit is the one that's holding onto their sword and drinking their water like this. So he divides them up into two groups. The varsity, the guys that know what they're doing over here, and there are 9,700 of them. And over here, the group that put their sword down, drinking water like this, updating their Snapchat and selfies and whatever. This group over here, 300. 300 people in that group. And God says, okay, cool. Send the 9,700 elite soldiers home. You don't need them. Keep the 300 guys who are over here doing who knows what, and that's what you need. Again, if I'm Gideon, at this point, I'm just sitting there going, seriously, yes, thank you. You're nuts. What are you doing? This is not a good idea. Right? When I was in 5th grade, there was a bully that terrorized our playground. And he was a really, really big kid, probably held back a couple years or something. And there were 4 or 5 of us that were just these scrawny little nerdy kids, and he would just tormented us for all of 5th grade. I'm talking, purple nurples and Indian rubs and all kinds of bad things. Anyways, do all this stuff to us. And so we decided that we were going to stand up, not just for ourselves, but for the entire playground. So the 5 of us get together and we hatch this plan. And the plan is that we are going to lure him out thinking that he's in a one-on-one kind of situation, a one-on-one fight. And then the other 4 of us are going to come running and just beat him down, right? To show him that you can't bully people. Teach him not to bully by bullying him. It makes sense. So anyways, I get selected by my group of friends to be the one who's going to confront him. And so we get this whole plan. So at lunch, I go up to him and I start running my mouth, and he gets really mad, and I call him out and I say, why don't you meet me at the playground right after school, man, and I'll show you. And so the plan then is that when he came to the playground, my friends were going to be hiding around the corner, and I was going to say a certain phrase, and the one that we decided is I was going to say, what you don't understand is I didn't come alone. And when I said that, just like in a movie or something, they were all going to run out, and we were going to rush this fool, and we were going to win. And that was our whole plan. So he comes out after school, the showdown is there, and he's standing right there, and he goes, all right, I hope you're ready for this. And I said, I hope you're ready for this, because I didn't come alone. Nothing. I didn't say it loud enough. And as he's coming towards me, I go, because I didn't come alone. Here's the thing, I came alone. I didn't realize it until this moment, but I was the only one there. My friends had decided this was a bad plan, and I got it handed to me. I think I'm still medically recovering from the wedgie that I got in 5th grade on that day. But the next day at school, I go in and I see that group of friends, and I go right for them, and they go with their heads down. And what do I say? Are you kidding me? Seriously, we had a plan. You said you were going to do your part. I did my part, and then nothing. Thanks for having my back. If I'm Gideon, I feel that way. And I've felt that way myself before. Maybe you have. Because if you're focused on the things you have lost, it is really easy to go, seriously? Like, I'm doing my part. I'm not perfect. And I'm not even asking for a life that is perfect. I'm not even asking for no problems or anything that. My expectations are actually quite a bit lower than that. I'm just saying, God, you said you'd show up. I'm doing this your way. You said you were with me and that it didn't matter how many things I had because I had you, and now I have nothing, and I'm not feeling very good about the situation. And what's interesting is it's not like Gideon could just give up. Right? He had these 300 guys. He was at the battle scene. He had to move forward. Same with us. I mean, you might really feel like you are tethered right now to something you've lost, but you still got to get up and put your shoes on tomorrow, right? You still have to get up and go to work tomorrow. You still have to see that person who you feel like you've lost. You still have to find another job. You still have to face your addiction. You still have to figure out where your place is in your world. You still have to do all of these things, even though you feel that loss. And that's the situation that Gideon was in. And so here's Gideon with his 300 men going into the battle. And God says something really interesting to Gideon at that point that I think is worth noting. It says in verse 7, the Lord told Gideon, with these 300 men that remain, I will rescue you and give you the victory over the Midianites. What's interesting is God has not changed his stance in any of this. Not one time. I mean, things keep being lost. Gideon keeps losing more men, and God keeps saying the same thing. I will use exactly what you have to do everything that I want to do. You've got enough, and I'm with you. And that's an interesting thing that happens in this story. So Gideon goes into this battle and gets ready to have it. And so it's right at the 11th hour, right at that moment when they're about to start, and God goes, okay, it's time. Let's do this. But if you're still afraid, then I've got one more sign I can show you to let you know that I'm with you and that I'm on your side. So if you're still afraid, here's what I want you to do. Sneak down to the Midianite camp, just you and one of your servants, and listen to the conversation they're having. Then you're going to know that I got this and that I'm on your side. So Gideon and one of his servants sneak down to the camp. And this is such a weird part of the story. But they sneak down to this tent and kind of listen, with their ear up to the tent. And here is a paraphrase of the conversation they hear two of the Midian warriors having. One of them says to the other one, dude, I had the weirdest dream last night. The weirdest dream. Yeah, what was it? Okay, check this out. I dreamt that we were in this tent. We're just hanging out, playing cards or whatever. And all of a sudden, a giant loaf of bread rolled down that hill from above us, and it just wiped out all of our tents, and we all died. And the other guy says to him, dude, that's not funny. Why? I know it's just a dream. I was just saying it was weird. No, I know what that dream means. What does it mean? There's a man named Gideon, and he's going to come with an army, and he's going to wipe all of us out, and there's nothing we can do about it. So Gideon's standing outside, hearing his name used by people that have never met him, and hearing exactly what God said would happen, foretold. And the Bible says that when Gideon heard this, he ran away, and he worshiped God. Like he ran, and the best translation of that is he fell down, face first, on his knees, and just worshiped. And it's such a weird, telling of a dream, and you go, well, what made all of this happen? And here's the best way to understand it. Gideon didn't worship because of the dream. Gideon worshiped because he realized something. And I think it's the same thing all of us have to realize if we're going to let our loss not be what defines us. If we're going to move past our loss into the victory that God has for us, I think we have to figure out what Gideon figured out. And here's what it is. Gideon realized in that moment that God is not limited by what we have lost. God can do everything he wants to do with what is left. And if I came here to tell you anything this morning, it's to tell you that God is not limited by what you had but you don't have anymore. God can do everything he wants to do in your life with exactly what you have right now. And when Gideon figured that out, when Gideon realized that it wasn't about the 31,700 men that were gone, that it was about what God was going to do with the 300 right in front of him, he started worshiping God because he turned his attention from the rearview mirror. He turned his attention from his issue, from his problem, from what he had lost, and he realized that God had been saying the same thing to him from the very beginning. I'm with you. Go with what you have. You don't have to be afraid because I'm going to be with you through the entire thing. Listen, we have all experienced loss, every one of you and every one of us, and I'm sorry for the loss that I've experienced. And I'm sorry for the loss that you've experienced as well. I'm sorry that those things have happened to you. But here's the reality in all of this. If we want to experience the victory that God offers, then we have to realize that he is not limited by those things we're holding on to. God does not need what you have lost in order to do his work in you, through you, with you right now. He will do it right in this moment with what you have left. He is the God of what you got, man. And it's always going to be enough. God plus whatever you have is always everything that you need. And when Gideon figured that out, it didn't matter anymore that he was overwhelmed, that he was overmatched, that he was outmanned, that he was out-strategized, that he was out and over everything. It didn't matter anymore that that was the case because he realized that God didn't need all of that to do his work through him. And so Gideon goes into battle with the stupidest battle plan that you could possibly imagine. Here's what it is. Gideon divides his guys into 3 groups of 100. And he's like, I want everyone to do exactly what I do. And he gives each of them 3 things. Okay, remember, they're going against a trained army with weapons. Here are the 3 items they each receive. A trumpet, because that's good in battle. A torch, and a clay pot, right? And then you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe they're going to use the torch to light everyone on fire. No, Gideon says, put the pot over the torch so no one can see the candle, therefore negating the power of having a torch to begin with, right? So they got the right weapons if they want to kumbaya them to death in a battle here, right? And they go down, and Gideon says, just do what I do. And God says, I want you to blow the trumpet, and then I want you to break the pot so that the lights are exposed. So they go down there, and Gideon blasts his trumpet. They break the pot, and everybody else, this is for God and for Gideon. And the Bible tells us that the Midianite army wakes up, because this is happening in the middle of the night. They hear the trumpets, and they're confused. They see all the lights from the torches, and they think they're surrounded by a giant army. They don't know what's going on, and they run away, and they just get out of town. And Gideon has this amazing victory. Overwhelmed, outmatched, outgunned, bigger army, everything. And the one thing he gets, he wins at the end. And the reason he wins at the end is because he realizes that God does not need what he lost. God didn't need those other guys to do his work. What God said to Gideon was true. What you have will always be enough if you've got me with you. You know, there's one thing that Gideon lost at the end of this story, his kind of final loss, and that was that pot, right, that goes over the candle. Because God told him to crack that open. And so of the three things he has, the trumpet, the pot, and the candle, he even gets one of those taken away from him. But isn't it interesting that when he breaks that pot, the light comes out? Like in the middle of the darkness, when he cracks that pot open, the light shines in the middle of it. And maybe, just maybe, the thing that you've lost and the thing that you feel like you're losing right now, maybe that's the thing that when it's broken away, you're going to see the light of God show up. Because God does not need the things you've lost to do what he wants to do in your life. He is the God of what you've got. And so that's my prayer and my challenge to you. That's why I think this is a story we should all know. Is whatever that thing is that you're tethered to, whatever that thing is that you're holding on to that you've lost, just think of it right now in your mind for a minute. Whatever it is, just picture what it is. And then just picture God saying to you, you don't have to have that. You don't have to have that because you have me. And me plus whatever you have is enough. It always will be. And we're going to give an offering to God now. And as we do, I just encourage you to continue to just think about what this is for you and how God will be with you in the middle of your loss.